Hello everybody, Mariner here. Welcome to Net That Haul and the Gameweek 3 Matchup Review Show. As always with me, Gabe, FPL Lens, and the one person who makes me more nervous than anybody, FPL Teacher, aka Lucian. How are you doing, gentlemen?
Doing just fine. I'm looking forward to got it. Looking forward to this show. Yeah. Looking forward to teacher scolding you.
He won't scold me. I don't think so. Anyway, teacher, are you going to tell me off for pulling my wildcard?
Oh gosh, you know what? I've implemented this system in school recently, right? Where the children swear at each other. So I tell them, you know what? You're not allowed to swear at each other unless you're complimenting them. If you're paying them compliments, you're allowed to swear at each other. So now the whole class is like, Chris, your hair is so distracting. It's so friggin' distracting. I love it. Yeah. So everyone like just laughs instead of swears. It's really good.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
That's good. So you didn't mention my wildcard, so that's a good start anyway. Yeah. So, all right then, gentlemen, shall we dive into today? I suppose we probably had. We'll say hello to a few people as we go on. But I suppose, without further ado, since we're always trying to keep this under an hour, we better dive in, haven't we? So, first things, before we start, as always, it's this time of year, we are looking for nominations for the Best in Fantasy Football Content Awards. It's on the screen. Also, listen to it. If you're on the pod, come across and you'll be able to get the links from there. But if you've got take 5 seconds to give us a vote for the Best in Fantasy Football video category. You can find us http://footballcontentawards.com/voting. And you can also tweet. I am voting for the at the underscore FCAs for at Net That Haul in Best in Fantasy Football Video. And again, come to the YouTube if you want some more details, or hit us up on Twitter. You'll see it there as well. Gentlemen, Game Week 3 review. A certain man called Raheem Sterling topped the points with 19. Gabriel, I did say last week I thought he was about to go off. And guess what? I didn't bring him in. And do you know why? Because I didn't like my team structure the way I was doing it. Because I'm wildcarding so early, it was purely down to structure. I really wanted him in my team. But yeah, there we go. There he is there with no logo on their shirts. I think those shirts look quite nice, those Chelsea shirts with no sponsor on. Quite refreshing to see no sponsor. But yeah, Sterling there. 10.2% selected, 19 points. Happy days. Matt Cash called out in pre-season on Net That Haul, 17 points. He was called out a couple of times, wasn't he, in the pre-season shows? We heard him. Gusto. Now, I did have him, but so did half of those jammy devils who got Gabriel's points got his points off the bench, boys. I hate bench points. I'm going to come back to that later. I'm going to quickly rattle through the rest. Diaby, 12. Bruno Fernandes, finally. 12. Udogie, 12. Bowen, 12. Luton next. Anderson, 11. Darwin. Gabe, we will touch on Darwin Núñez tonight, I promise you. Jose Shah, 11. Gross, 10. Palinia, 10. Rodrigo, again, 10. Gordon, the Trent Alexander-Arnold wrecker, 10. And Maddison, 10. That's the key thing. How many of those players did you have, lads?
In the starting 11 or on the bench?
Yes, in your starting 11. Don't give me that. Yeah. How many of those did you have, Net That Haulers, in that start in your teams as well? Plop it into the chat. Well, I'm seeing how many I had. I had 1, 2, 2.
Twice more what I had. Must be your wild card.
None. Wow.
None, teacher.
I'm just glad that Jose Sa is part of this list. Holy crap! But yeah,
Yeah.
no, I've got none. I've got
What I
nothing.
want to know is when was the last time we had a captains which missed penalties 2 in 2 weeks? That's a good one. That's quite an interesting little stat for you. But anyway, there we go. So anyway, that's my little bit of mirth to start the day off. Chelsea against Luton, gentlemen. What did we think? Well, the NetxG is always going to struggle against with teams which are just coming up. But Chelsea were really poor last season, which I think affected the numbers somewhat. Chelsea at home on the fixture difficulty, on the other hand, was very favourable, 2.8 and 2.4 for defence. Zonals lit up, as did shots in the box, and of course, it took a while, but Chelsea delivered. Teacher, tell us about it.
Man, well, there were two things mentioned in the slide about this. The first being the exact zonal matchups where Chelsea's strengths nicely matched up against Luton's weakness, which is their right side because it's more aggressive. And it did happen, it just didn't happen constantly. It was basically Sterling's brilliance, right? Everyone's seen the highlights by now. And that did the job really. As long as Sterling touched the ball, I think we ignored a little bit that Sterling looked really good already against West Ham. I think we should have dug a little bit deeper into the fact that Sterling could already beat 4 players when he played against West Ham. And so what he did against Luton should really be no surprise. That poor fullback that used to play for Wolves, Ryan Giles. Heads off. Anyway, yeah, I think the takeaway from all of this is that Chelsea's influence is not focused on Enzo Fernandez as we would like to have it. It's now spread amongst 4 players: Sterling, Enzo, Jackson, and Chilwell. It's just nicely spread among the 4, whether it's based on zonals, situations, and yeah, what if you pick Sterling, it's just purely based on his confidence. If you feel that he will ride his confidence and get more returns, there be it. There be it. Luton as well. Yeah, it's just about that deep block and that right side still as a weakness. But let's not be surprised if Tahiti Chong is dropped for the next game because his substitute did a lot better than him. Simple as that.
I mean, Luton tried hard. They battled, but eventually they get found out. You cannot survive for 90 minutes. They are going to concede goals late, in my opinion. What was your perspective of this?
Yeah, I mean, I think I still think we're being quite harsh on Luton, and I think that's coming from the results at the end of the game. When you look back at the end of the game, 3-0, 4-1, and I think we're looking at that, and that's kind of tainting a little bit what we see from Luton, what we've been seeing at the beginning of games. And but I agree, it's only a matter of time before they're broken down right now. But if you look at say you look at like the first 60 minutes of their 2 games in isolation as blocks, and you see there's something there to build from. If they can figure out that last piece, figure out how to bolster it down, maybe Chong's replacement is part of this kind of like figuring things out and how to survive and exist in the Premier League. I think Luton is obviously a fixture to target, but I don't think Luton is this trash bin of a team that like people are talking about that just like can't play, so they're going to be figured out for like all season. So I don't know, because I think we've seen some positive things from Luton in regards to the matchup in particular. Things didn't play out exactly as the data suggested, but first of all, the FDR was bang on. I thought 2.8 and minus 2.4 is like right on the money there. So I thought that was pretty cool to see that. It's I wrote here, Chelsea have not been able to break down deep blocks, so it could take an individual moment to break this one open. Lucian talked about Sterling's individual moments, his dribbling individual moments. So I think we nailed that. Chilwell's a standout. Chilwell was a standout. We saw how maybe he's allergic to scoring goals, so he gives it to the other team.
He does seem to be, doesn't he? I've noticed that as well. I'm wondering whether we've got an allergy to goals. Yeah, I noticed that.
He used to be way more selfish, right? Like he used to take those shots. So But so I think the Chilwell thing kind of panned out, except he made the wrong decision. And it says Jackson and Sterling could also combine with the former Jackson profiting from Sterling's dribbles into the box, and we saw them combine as well. Even though I think Lucian had a note, right? Lucian about like, tell us what that thought was. I saw it in the document.
Yeah, so the ball reaches Jackson directly a lot. So if it's not played from Gusto, if it's not played from Sterling, it would actually appear a lot more often from Thiago Silva because Luton sat really deep. The forwards barely pressed. The three centre backs had so much of the ball that the ball just went straight to Jackson and Jackson would feed Sterling. Unfortunately, Sterling just didn't care about Jackson. Sterling basically either went out wide to Gusto or took shots himself. So it's one-way traffic at the moment, and that's the unfortunate thing. So it just comes down to whether you feel that Sterling will eventually return the favor.
Well, I think it's one-way traffic until Sterling becomes unavoidable. So I think that's what happened in this game. And then at the end, Sterling, the only reason Jackson got that ball is because Sterling ran out of pitch to run. He's like, he goes wide, he gets to the end line, so it's like, okay, then I'll give the ball to Jackson. But you're right, he's not playing any like in the previous game he would dribble in the box, and I thought he would maybe look for Jackson as an outlet, and that isn't happening. But they did combine there for that third one. So
I'll just leave this stat with you. Luton's expected goals conceded 3.5 a game so far. They haven't played at home yet. That's the one thing. So I agree with you, Gabe. Let's give them a little bit of credit. But I have to say, at this moment, target Luton appears certainly to be a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Bournemouth Tottenham. Right. This was a good. I watched this game. I quite enjoyed it actually. NetxG 1.32 against 1.62. Okay, ended up 2-0, didn't it? Fixture Difficulty actually preferred Bournemouth, probably on the hangover from Spurs last year, with respect to Spurs being pretty poor away from home. They got a couple of whackings, didn't they? It quite like the zonals for Bournemouth, but I think we worked out there was a mistake in there. As for the rest game, it was all a bit neutral. Lucian, what about Spurs? I mean, Udogie, Maddison was fit, much to the disgust of anybody who sold him. And of course, Udogie's points stayed on the bench for many, including me.
Thankfully. Give me some time to catch up, guys. You know, I'm like somewhere in the 5.8 million rank jungle.
I told
now.
You should have wildcarded. I'm going to tell you off now.
Right.
Come on, mate. Tell us all about this one.
All right, here we go. So, first things first, there's not much to say about Spurs other than finally their central midfield is settled. Sarr and Bissouma should be first choice far and away ahead of Højbjerg and whoever they can play. Simply because both players progress with the ball a lot better. The whole reason Spurs could beat Bournemouth's counter press was because, well, Bournemouth couldn't bully Spurs off the ball. If you see how big Sarr and Bissouma are with the ball, you just can't. It's like playing against two Dembeles. Remember Dembele when he used to play for Spurs? That guy could not be shaken off the ball. Same thing. Sarr and Bissouma are absolute units. So yeah, the unfortunate thing was that Bournemouth got basically nothing off their counter press. It also didn't help that Bournemouth at home decided to play somebody silkier instead of Jadon Anthony. Justin Kluivert started on the left for the first time, and that made Bournemouth a lot more passive. You didn't get that crazy open game that you would see here in the slides, but they did have some mistakes. Bournemouth's goalkeeper especially made a couple of mistakes. And yeah, it's the mistakes don't come from Bournemouth's players making the mistake. It's more of after Bournemouth win the ball somewhere, they lose it there, and that's where Spurs hit them on the counter. So I think Spurs are finally getting it together. Not the fullback thing, because the fullback thing took time to build up. But for Spurs, the most interesting thing here that people have not picked up on yet is that what do you do without Richarlison? What do you do when Richarlison is shit, right? You bring him off. So
I can assure you, I've picked up on it.
People want Son to be central, right? People want Son to be central. And the solution that NG put up here was that he had two strikers. Son and Kulusevski played as a strike pair with Madison behind them. That is something we will definitely look forward to because it gave Madison so much more room to work with. It put Son and Kulusevski off the shackles, and you could see clearly that Son would look for Kulusevski. If not, Kulusevski would be looking for Son in central areas. It's so much more cohesive than having both of them stuck to the flanks. So that's something we should
Yeah,
look forward to.
I mean, Rich Allison was bloody awful again. I still think Son's nothing like the player he's been in the past. He's very patchy at the moment. I think it's Maddison or no one, quite frankly, from Spurs attack, from my perspective. Defensively wise, Gabe Udogie, nice bit of work to create the goal for Kulusevski. In fact, a very, very well worked goal all in. He's an option, I think. He looks like he's going to get forward.
Sounds like he's probably the 4.5 million defender to own, right? I'm happy I started the season with him. I'm not happy that Foden is locking his points. So that's my situation. But
at least he got a return. At least he got a return. That's one thing. Thank goodness. At least he got something. It wasn't a very good assist, but we'll take it. Gabe. We'll take it. We'll take anything. After last week, I'll take anything, mate. All right, let's keep going because I want to get on to this one. For somebody who was a former Gabriel owner, who noticed he was benched again, which actually was a bit of a relief for me, and then to see Saliba and the rest of the Arsenal defence concede within a minute, it made my weekend. Then I saw the goal, and then it made me laugh an awful lot. It was a rather strange positioning from Ramsdale. I don't think we'll see him anymore, gentlemen. I think we'll probably see a change between the sticks for Aston. I won't be all surprised. NetxG really liked Aston, 2.31. Didn't like Fulham so much, 1.3. Didn't take into account Ramsdale and his howler. Arsenal, fixture difficulty was really favourable at 3.6, defensively 1.3. Again, didn't take into account Ramsdale. Everything else lit up shot goal predictors, but as usual, Arsenal at home seem to be a bit stuttery. Lucian.
Well, you'd have to be in that position to understand why they made that error. So for the first time, right, we keep talking about Partey, Saka, and Odegaard establishing that connection on the right side. We finally see the weaknesses of that system. If you have Partey at right back, right, his natural instinct is to move into midfield. So what happened was Partey passes to Saka, Partey moves into midfield, Saka passes backwards to nobody. Except for Andres Pereira. So literally the whole team gets caught out, right? I think the problem here is that Arsenal are stuttery at home. Did they have most of the ball? Yes. Was it a walk in the park? Absolutely not. I think what we failed to account for was that Fulham are not as stubborn as when they were promoted anymore. They finally decided to integrate a few more signings into their system. One of them being their new defensive midfielder from last season, Sasha Lukic. We are very familiar with Fulham having the same weaknesses week in, week out, that they've actually benched Harrison Reed and nobody noticed. They've actually got three defensive midfielder now. They play Palinia, Lukic, and some other Andres Pereira was a lot deeper as well. So Fulham actually have a defensive formation away from home. Away to Fulham is not a captainable fixture. That's the real takeaway from all of this. But yeah, for Arsenal, I think what we have seen here is Fabio Vieira showing Kai Havertz how it's done in the left half space. It's not just about connecting play. Fabio Vieira actually created so much chaos on that left side when he came on that it blew Fulham open. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Havertz is like set for a game just to watch Vieira do his thing.
Gabe, your take. Saka back on penalties, which was again a source of great hilarity in the Mariner household. Although I did think he was going to miss it, to be honest.
Of course,
but
because that's what he
yeah,
does.
I thought he was going to miss it.
Mad.
Yeah, I genuinely did.
Yeah.
Arsenal are still. I mean, Gabe, I mentioned I feel they're a bit. I mean, they're creating plenty, but again, they still look like they're a bit shaky. To be honest with you, what's your take on them?
I mean, I think in the slide here, I think that the word for Arsenal is constipated. A lot of possession, they hold a lot, and then nothing comes out. They're like, and I think it's extremely frustrating from a tactical perspective. That he doesn't take some like tactical laxatives and let this team go. I disagree that Fabio Vieira was like yes, he brings something different, but it's up to Arteta. Like Arteta's not asking Havertz to do what Fabio Vieira does, right? Arsenal didn't spend however many million on Havertz to come in and do what a player they already own does. So for me, it's like Arteta is leaning towards, he's going towards this like the Ten Hags of the world, the Frank Lampards of the world, like just being too clever. Like you want to have all this possession, but you don't do anything about it. You want to have an impact from your left side, but then you want your team to play like the way they play with your subs and not the players you spend a bunch of money on. So I think Arsenal are walking contradiction. The fact that Saka took a penalty, I think, is a huge indictment on Arteta. Everybody's thinking he's going to miss it. How can he be so blind to assign this person penalties? So if anything, like I think this match tells me that Arsenal are not in a good state, that tactically they're a little bit of a mess, that they're lacking some identity, and I can understand why people are selling the likes of Martinelli for other players.
I always like it when we're talking about constipation in the shakes. But there's enough of that. Let's keep going. Brentford against Crystal Palace, gents. Okay. NetxG 1.4 for Brentford and 1.08 for Crystal Palace. It pretty much nailed this tight one. The fixture difficulty had a little bit more favour for Brentford, but not a lot. 1.6 and 1.3. I did like Brentford's headed chances. Teach, as a Mbumo owner, I was rather disappointed. He was nowhere to be seen. He was very quiet, I actually thought, and I thought Palace, generally speaking, didn't do a bad. From what I saw of it, didn't do a bad job. What's your view on this one?
I mean, it's Palace in a nutshell, isn't it? Palace aren't defensive. They just don't commit numbers forward to be exposed. So the only way you can actually expose Palace is to take them on. And there's only one player in that entire side that can actually take players on. Kevin Schade on that left side. He basically turned Ward inside out and he just shot. That's about it. The problem with the Mbomo Wisa thing is that even if Mbomo and Wisa pulled wide, right, to facilitate possession, they will not get the ball at all. There's no point. There was no way to actually break through Palace through their usual methods. So, as you said, headed chances had to be a thing, and it just played into Palace's strengths. I think, in some sense, Brentford themselves were very aware of what Palace could do on the counter attack. So Brentford themselves did not commit too many players forward, right? You talk about the 4-3-3 that they use at home against weaker sides, and like you would expect Rico Henry to double up against Kevin Schade all day, every day, and it just did not happen. Rico Henry did not bomb down the flanks until really late into the second half, which was one of the key things that Brentford should have done from the beginning. So maybe you can just call it that they wanted to be safe and rely on individual players to come through, and it just didn't happen. Full credit to Palace though; they did their thing and they do it well.
Yeah, as a Flecken owner, Gabe, I was spitting feathers, losing that clean sheet. I really thought it was fairly nailed on. I genuinely did. What's your perspective on this one? Did you happen to see this game?
No, I watched the highlights of this one. I watched like the beginning and then I watched the highlights later. But I don't know that there wasn't much. There didn't seem to be much to this game. Like I didn't I went through this game and I was like, I kind of have zero takeaways. Shada beat Ward on that left hand side, like I thought. Who played Palace last week? Arsenal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I thought Martinelli would do Ward the way Shada did Ward. That didn't happen, but it happened this week. So I think Ward is still the targetable player for Palace for sure. It's probably their weak link, but there's very little takeaways for me from this one.
Okay. Well, let's keep going.
Speaking of little takeaways.
Yes. As a former Pickford owner. Again, I am so sorry for anyone who owns John Pickford. I mean, to be fair, he did make one outstanding save. I did see him make an amazing save. But that said, it was just written in the stars, wasn't it? Once again, goal out of nothing, clean sheet evaporating. Yes. Lucian, last on match of the day from my perspective, as they always say. But that's not uncommon for Everton and Wolves games. What about this one? Let's cover it in 2 minutes.
Okay, sure. Well, Wolves didn't have their star player because Matthias Nunes was being courted by Manchester City, so he went on strike. And that basically had Wolves lose a lot of their possession. I think it ended 50-50. And Wolves went direct. So, unsurprising that a wing across from the flanks reached big man Sasha Kalajic's head. But Everton, wow, Danjuma, watchlist that guy, because when Danjuma starts firing, he will not stop. But besides that, really, there's not a lot to say. Unfortunately, the midfield system for Everton did not work. And everything just goes through Danjuma at the moment, whether it's running off to the outside of Wolves' defensive block, behind them, around them, through them. For Wolves, though, Fabio Silva, well, Death, Texas, and Fabio Silva missing a big chance. That always happens now. So it's just a matter of when that young guy will come good. Otherwise, yeah, it's just a game of moments. Just a game of moments.
But Everton missed, or Everton had, I should say, was it 5 big chances? 5 big chances. They literally can't hit a barn door from a yard at this moment in time. And then, of course, what happens is, as like you say, the death and taxes quote, then Pickford concedes. And there we go. And at the moment, I'm afraid that is a sure thing, isn't it? Again, when I really look back at my team and wonder, was I right to wildcard? I tell you what, there's a hell of a lot of things went right for me. Nearly 3 million rank went right as well. Or 2.5 million rank.
Yeah, sorry, one last thing. Just for the record there, if anybody wants to target Wolves as a fixture, buy the right winger, because Wolves does not protect their left flank still. Okay, that's it.
Right. Well, we'll keep an eye on that one, Gabe. We'll have to look and see what that happens with the matchups going forward.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Here we go.
Really quickly on.
Yes. Sorry, Gabe.
A quick comment on Wolves. I was so happy to see Sasha Kalajdzic score. He was fun to watch in the Bundesliga. He's like 6'70", and he's this massive guy. So I wonder if that's going to change Wolves at all. I'd love to see like creativity through the middle, and then like spread out and just like flying balls into the big towering Kalajdzic. It's good to see him on the scoring board again. Let's go.
Yeah, I agree. It was nice to see. Manchester United against Nottingham Forest now. Here we go. A little bit of trivia for you. Was that won your 7th goal in 7 games for Forest? I think that's a record for Forest. 7 on the trot now. I really like the arse dancing by Onana. I thought it was marvellous. It was a new dance style. Did you see him bouncing around on his backside after a minute in the box? I mean, someone said he faked a shot. I think he just fell over, and then blamed everybody else, which is marvellous because that's what Onana does. I don't know if you've noticed. What he does is something goes wrong, and then he just goes and starts pointing at everybody and blaming, shouting and screaming at everybody else. It's a bit like me at work. Anyway, there we go. Manchester United 1.7, 1.79 XG, NetxG. It really fancied them. Nottingham Forest, it didn't, but it was 2-0 after 4 minutes, boys, which completely threw the fixture difficulty into the bin, quite frankly, because it liked Manchester United for a 2.6 defence and 3.8 attack. Yes, Manchester United lit up. Bruno Fernandes does Bruno Fernandes things finally, Lucian. Those who sold him, we did warn people not to sell Manchester United assets last week, but those who sold Bruno particularly, I think, mud.
Yeah, well, Bruno Fernandes had it coming. Like, you talk about who has the most character in the squad, who would turn things around, and Bruno Fernandes basically said, "You know what? I'm not even going to drop deep and link play. I'm just going to permanently play second striker since I have Eriksen behind me now." And yeah, that worked. It was great. It was great to see Bruno Fernandes actually in attacking positions and doing well. I mean, Rashford being on the left wing also helped, I guess. And what do you call it? You've seen those given in terms of the penalty. But yeah, Bruno Fernandes earned every point he got, and I wouldn't be surprised if he delivered against Arsenal again. Um, yeah, I think, I mean, I would say personally, I loved the fact that it was Rashford that gave away the ball that led to United conceding the first goal. I thought that was thoroughly deserved because Rashford had been complacent for way too long. People thinking that, he keep the ball well and all of that. But yeah, he has to earn his spot. And it was glad to see some sort of redemption where he actually gets involved in the other two goals that United used to get back. Um, but otherwise, yeah, the general pattern of play here is that United keep the left side compact so that they release all of the right side. Bruno shifts over to the right. He works with Casemiro. He works with Wan-Bissaka, and it's all just looking for Bruno Fernandes just to take shots because Rashford is rubbish still at shooting. Martial is non-existent, and yeah, everything just flows down that right side for now.
Yeah, I do like Bruno, Gabe. I mean, I still got Rashford because I just thought, again, I just left it where it was again because I genuinely thought, well, quite frankly, I'm not changing it because it's going to go against me if it did, as it happens, 2 returns anyway. Um, I've got another question for you, boys, and particularly a player who I think might come into our reckoning in the not too distant future. Morgan Gibbs-White. Fixtures start to turn for Forest in a few weeks' time. Talismanic, I think, is where I would come from, and particularly most things go through him. I think it was 2 assists this time. Again, what's your perspective on someone like on Forest? Because we always talk about Manchester United, but let's just touch on Forest for a change.
Well, the obvious thing is that Gibbs White is a creator. He doesn't take a lot of shots himself. So it
Mhm.
comes down to whether you prefer having a creator that will reliably get you assists, or are you willing to take a gamble on one of their shooters being Awoniyi or Brennan Johnson? Because Johnson was the star of the show here. He
Mhm.
actually had way more shots rather than Awoniyi's physicality. Yeah, pace troubled United way, way more. That's my take on it.
And
Gabe,
and uh, and Awoniyi just keeps ticking along, doesn't he?
he's a
Even though he
mon-
isn't focal,
he's a monster actually. He's a bit of a
he's just
monster.
always there. He's
Yeah,
so that's why I don't know if I would go for. I think I would favor, based on what I've seen this season, I would favor Awoniyi, but the rise of Brennan Johnson against United, I agree with Lucian. He was used so much and was looked for. I wrote about Brennan Johnson a couple of weeks ago, like thinking that Forest would use his pace, and they didn't at all. That everything went through Morgan Gibbs White. So what I think is maybe against a back five, Morgan Gibbs White might be the more focal, and then against a team that maybe wants the ball more or attacks more, then you look for the speedster in Brennan Johnson, and then Awani is just kind of like he'll be inconsistent, but he'll always have a chance because of his central position and physicality.
Yeah, he's very physical. I do like him a lot. He came out of the Bundesliga, didn't he? And we did say he might take a while to settle down, but he has. He certainly did at the back end of this. He's certainly good, very, very good option, I think, going forward potentially. But of course, the thing is for Forest is that if they keep scoring away from home, then we've got half a chance with them. Because last year, we remember, they were really poor away from home for a long, long time, and maybe that's a slight change this season. Right. Just before we get to this one, 35 minutes in, we haven't asked for a like yet. Please give us a like if you haven't already. Also, if you just stumbled upon us and you like what you're seeing, hit subscribe. And even better, if you really, really like what you're seeing, become a hauler. And we'll come up. Obviously, there's a few of those in tonight. I think we'll have a bit of a chat about the mini league later on, which is part of the Discord group where Gabriel and Lucian and myself and everybody else hangs out. Right, back to the what was the sofa game of the week for me, having no Brighton assets in my wildcard. That was a real worry. I've got to be honest, especially when I was actually sat with a West Ham fan over breakfast before I travelled back on Friday up in Estonia, and he just said to me, he says, "Chris, we're going to get battered." And I was like, "Oh, that's just what I didn't want to hear." But I think deep down I did feel it. Brighton, the NetxG also thought that Brighton would do okay at 1.66. West Ham, 0.96. Fixture Difficulty absolutely loved Brighton, 5.8. It was off the scale. And all the zonals, the XG, 2.4, big chances, 3.6, 7 shots on target, 13 shots in the box, ton of headers as well. Everything loved Brighton. They created quite a bit. By heck, they looked a bit leaky, Lucian. I think we see the new Brighton. What's your perspective?
Well, I'm gonna go with what the slide predicted correctly. Brighton, vulnerable down the right side, happened again. It was just unfortunate that West Ham started with Paqueta on the left side, and then when Souček got injured, Benrahma came in, and Benrahma eventually punished them as well. I think what we also underrate is Antonio's work rate as a striker, right? Because he initially started as a wing back, and then he moved up to midfield, and then as a striker finally. So Antonio helped out a lot in defense to help transition to enable the likes of Paqueta and Benrahma moving into the final third. But more importantly is this: Brighton are their own worst enemy. There were so many players rested for this game that Brighton basically tripped up over themselves. I think in the first half itself, the best chances fell for Billy Gilmore. So it really just shows that like Brighton have to play their first 11 in order to win games. Like I think the only difference that they can make in the final third is whether they want to use Joao Pedro to move down the half spaces or whether they want to have Ferguson and Welbeck just sit in the middle there. Because like there was just such a high level of requirement to break down West Ham because West Ham just sat there, right? They just sat there, four at the back, four in midfield, and they just did not move. They go, just come at me, bro. And yeah, Brighton just did not break the deadlock, and West Ham just hit them 1v1. Antonio loves the duel. He just got past Dunk, he got past Webster, just bullied them off the ball, really. So yeah, West Ham deserved the result, and it just comes down to whether Brighton can rejig their system and come up with a reliable way to play the same way week in, week out. They did not this time round.
Yeah, I mean, Estupinian, Gabe. I mean, look, he could have had a couple of assists. Matoma could have had something as well. I mean, if you look at it, there were chances for these players. There always will be. The fact is, I think you're relying on attacking returns, quite frankly, for Estupinian at this moment in time. I see them conceding. What's your perspective?
Honestly, we've been saying since preseason that Brighton are systemically not set up to defend. They will concede. That's just part of their DNA and who they are. But the shocking thing, and again, we've seen this a lot. Just good managers just having total tactical like moments of ineptitude. I mean, yeah, how is it that the chances are falling for Billy Gilmore when you're playing against these blocks, these 2 blocks of 4? Why aren't you getting the ball wide? Why aren't you trying to get 1v1 situations against the fullbacks? Matoma against the right back, March on the other side. but everything's in the middle. It just and like the rotation made no sense. The rotating against this opponent and the way they rotated against this opponent, how is Billy Gilmore going to help anybody in midfield? West Ham don't need to adjust to him. You put Pedro in there, then West Ham need to adjust to something, and that'll open up things for the wing. So I think we saw just like a De Zerbi brain fart here, and it's just something to put behind them and move on.
Well, I mean, perhaps he didn't expect a team, David Moyes, away from home to score 3 goals. Maybe that's another thing.
But there was a reason for it, and James Milner is one of those reasons. But the other thing is that a lot of people are talking about Bowen, right? Because West Ham faced Luton next. I still don't think West Ham is a team to invest in because they settle. They're not going to push for goals. They're not going to push for attack. And what if they settle with a Paqueta goal or a Ben Rahma, inclusion, and then you're sitting there waiting for something for Bowen that's probably not going to come. So there's too much on the back foot for my tastes.
44% expected goal involvement so far this season, 1.74 XG over 3 games. Ever present, Bowen. Numbers aren't bad. His numbers aren't bad. Now, I mean, again, this is Luton away. This is at Luton, isn't it? So that's one thing I think we've just got to keep an eye on it. I tell you what, another player who's, I mean, I'm not going to make any moves this week, almost certainly, because I wildcarded last week. But if I had a little burning in my pocket, a transfer burning in my pocket, do you know who I might bring in this week? Antonio.
Oh, not James Ward-Prowse? Oh, that's a shame.
No, I'd go Antonio, I think. And I'll tell you why I'd go Antonio. Because Antonio's on a streak. And Antonio is extremely streaky. He'll score 3 or 4. He'll go, I reckon, I wouldn't be at all surprised if he doesn't score the next 2 to 3 weeks. Every one of the next 3 weeks. 2 to 3 weeks. That's the way he goes. Then he'll go cold again. Then he'll go cold.
How long has he been cold?
Long time.
Like, do you remember?
This is nothing more than a gut feel, Gabe. I am watching what I saw with Sterling. I am seeing the old Antonio.
You've had good ones this season.
I am seeing the old Antonio again. The way he turned that ball and fired it into the opposite corner was the old Antonio. The way he scored the week before was the old Antonio. He has the ability to bully Luton. I guarantee you. That's my call for the week.
I like JWP. Just like in general, I think he's going to be so central to what everything West Ham are doing. Oh, and West Ham now will have Kudus that will likely play on the.
Yeah, and of course I do. And look, I'm not going to get me wrong. I like James Ward-Prowse as well. I really, I think he's going to be a great fit for West Ham because they rely so much on set pieces, and if there's anybody got the ability to deliver a set piece, it's James Ward-Prowse. Should we keep going? Burnley against Aston Villa. Okay. I didn't watch this one. Of course, Woodworkio got his regular assist as usual. But let's go through the numbers. He didn't think much to this. It thought Aston Villa's numbers on NetxG were going to be pretty low. But of course, Gabe, we are sort of like just trying to check for the wind direction with these promoted teams still at the moment. So we're not going to get these right much. Fixture difficulty liked Aston Villa a bit more, 1.5, defensively 0.9, and it liked the central matchup, 4.3, but it did expect that Aston Villa would get chances. Lucian, 2 goals for cash. I don't think you'd have called that one.
No, because
if you'd have been doing a review, a preview, I should say.
Yeah, not at all, because nobody would know when Unai Emery would whip out the 3-5-1-1, 3-box-1, 5-box-1. I don't even know what formation this is anymore. He kept the box, but he had 5 defenders instead of 4 defenders behind him. So that pushed Lucas Dean and Matty Cash all the way up alongside Ollie Watkins up front. I think really we are looking at Emery's evolution this season, and we had no idea. This is life without Tyrone Mings. They play 3 centre-backs and they push 2 wing-backs up alongside Watkins, and they wait for DRB to do damage. It really is as simple as that. Ball goes to Diaby, Burnley collapse, and the two wing backs are free. Like, Cash wasn't the only one getting shots off Diaby. Lucas Dean was like crossing non-stop from the left side. So I think in terms of what Villa do well is that Emery knows when to play three at the back and he knows when to play four at the back. Yeah, a lot of people looked at this and they went, oh, 4-2-2-2? Matty Cash out of position, left wing? No. This is just purely a wing back system. But Villa have a weakness. They have a weakness. And all they need is for a central striker or just a dribbler to confront the back three. Tyron Mings is the only genuine tackler on the ball. And the other three defenders, they just sit back and they let Burnley's dribblers run at them and run at them and run at them. And that was how Burnley got their goal and their big chances, for that matter. That's about it.
Interesting. Gabe, not many teams go up to Burnley and win 3-1. I was quite impressed.
I think we're going to be seeing more of that, like that. This going up to Turf Moor on a cold night kind of thing it's different. That was a different Burnley, different identity. So I think against this Burnley, that's more open, that presses a little bit more. I think Emery, what Emery did here is it worked, and I want to see him do it again. I want to see him see if he'll do the same thing against a non-promoted team or like a mid-table team or even like a top 6, top 7 type of team. I'm not sure if he'll be so cavalier. Ending up with basically a 3. I mean, it's kind of like a 3-2-1-4 in the at times. Or like a 3-2-5 even at times. It's like that front five, they're kind of all over the place when they're on that front foot. So I think it's going to depend a lot on game state. So look to games if Villa will have if the opponents are maybe more like to have more possession, then I doubt Villa will commit that many forward. Maybe one wing back at a time or something like that. But it's interesting to see that development, and it makes me really excited for. Wait, how long is Alex Moreno out? It's a long time.
I know. I'd have to check. I'm just looking at Villa here. Their expected goal involvement at the moment. We said Watkins was going to be the talisman pre-season, didn't we, Gabe? What was your words? Your words were that somebody may cannibalise Watkins.
Diaby will cannibalize production.
Yes, exact words. Diaby, 35% expected goal involvement. Watkins, 36%. Cannibalisation. There. Go. Although Matty Cash is 25%, so there we go. That might price. You can always make a story out of your data, can't you, if you want to? When did I hear it? Maybe I read it somewhere this morning. I was reading. I'm sure I didn't listen to anything this morning on the train. I'm sure it said, "Eye test before occurs before stats." I remember that. That's a very, very good point. Stats come afterwards. Sheffield United against Manchester City. We talk about death and taxes, and we talk about Manchester City conceding goals late. But remember, that only happens when Mariner owns a defender of Manchester City. It doesn't happen until I own a defender from Manchester City, boys. But the moment I do, there we go again. But to be fair, Gabe, your NetxG actually saw potentially a Sheffield United goal. 1.85 for Manchester City, 0.91 for Sheffield United. In fact, it probably got the score right if you really want to be clever. Fixture difficulty for me obviously is different. It doesn't work in that way. 2.7 for attack, 3.5 for defence. Dear me, that Bogle goal really hurt me. Lucian, I'm just going to go on a little bit of a tangent here. I wasn't impressed with Haaland. I genuinely wasn't impressed with Haaland. I have a feeling he's struggling for form. He's getting increasingly frustrated, which was interesting. In fact, I actually thought he could have even got a red he was getting to that point where he could even have got himself into trouble, I thought, at the end of the first half. What's your perspective on this? I mean, he doesn't become a bad player overnight, but is there trouble at mill, as they say in the north of England?
Whoa, that's the first time I'm hearing that. Yeah, City, for the first time in a long while, actually look normal. You know how City somehow come up with that nonsense about inverting fullbacks or defenders or midfielders into midfield and all that, right? How they have a super complex system. They were not complex at all because it's not about missing Foden. They have plenty of depth for that. They were missing Akanji. So they basically could not overload midfield because Akanji was not available. And yeah, they just could not dominate Sheffield United at all. It was just so frustrating to watch because you'd expect City with all their possession to come up with all these big chances, right? And nothing happened without Foden, without Akanji. Like those two basically left City sitting in front of a big red and white wall with no options until Kovacic finally had the balls to go forward and actually play through passes to Haaland himself. So I think it took a while. It took a while, but really, Foden is the superstar of that team because Alvarez did a job. He did a job as the number 10. He still received the ball and he did manage to find Haaland a couple of times, but you cannot put everything on Alvarez's shoulders to carry the team forward. You just cannot. So yeah, literally, the minute Foden came on, he had a big chance himself, and that assist. I know people will say that it's lucky, but just him getting into that position is something that Bernardo Silva could not do all day. And in fact, when Foden came on, Bernardo Silva went over to the left, and for the first time, we saw Sheffield United's wingbacks panic because they had two wingers in front of them, right? You don't see that very often. So, yeah, City were normal, long story short. City were finally normal because they just did not have the depth.
I mean, Foden obviously was missing, apparently because of a stomach complaint, so the opposite to the constipation game, by the sound of things. Well, I'm going to stick on this. I'm going to stick on this theme. Did you think Haaland was shit? Because I have to say, I wasn't impressed at all as a captain. I was chuckling away to myself because it was 180% owned. I didn't give a flying monkeys about it. I really didn't. But the fact is, he looked bloody awful, I thought, for a long period of time.
Holland is young and he's a bit petulant. So when Manchester City aren't creating what he thinks Manchester City, quote unquote, should be creating, then he gets himself in a little bit of a tizzy. And I think that's what happened in this game. He thought Manchester City like nothing was happening and there wasn't much for him. So he starts to throw a little bit of a tantrum. And I think actually in that sense, Lucian hit on a good point that Foden is the superstar. He is more mature, certainly in this system. So he knows how this system can ebb and flow. He knows the right positions to get. Where Holland, this is, well, he's a monster and he's a robot and he's all these things. And he will body people and throw people down, and he will also get frustrated. And I don't see Foden doing the same thing. Foden is a little bit more resilient mentally in that regard. So I think they will look to Foden for leadership. But Holland, it takes one game for him to turn it around, right? Like we saw this last season. We saw this in the Bundesliga.
Of course.
So just be aware.
It's only
of
a matter
that.
of time. Yeah.
It is.
I mean, look, don't get me wrong. But I am making a point. I mean, I noticed it the week before last as well.
Mm-hmm.
He's mishitting things. He doesn't seem quite on it. He just seems a bit off it at the moment. That's just what I know. But because you can't carry on the way that Haaland does every week. I mean, at the end of the day, he's human. At the end of the day, he's human. He's not a robot as much as people think he is. Which takes us on to the next thing, for the next game. Now, the fixture difficulty was broken. It just thought Liverpool were a laughing stock. For a while, it looked like they might be as well. It looked like it might be going down that way. I think this is an interesting one. Your fixture difficulty on NetxG also gave it had at 2.24. It really liked Newcastle. I thought Liverpool were a bit better, Lucian. I genuinely thought they were. I thought the Salah assist for the Newcastle goal was spectacularly good, which absolutely was hilarious because once again, Trent Alexander-Arnold looks to be the weak link.
Well, thank you for saying the first and the last sentence of my spiel. But yes, red cards change games. In fact, potential red cards change games because I think Newcastle pissed off Trent, and then Trent reacted, and he could have had a red himself. And I think it's one of those games where, like, you are a teammate of Trent, and then you try to defend his honor. Like, you know how sometimes we play football ourselves, right? And then, like, to save someone else, we commit the shithousery ourselves. And so Van Dijk did that, and he just, yeah, I don't even think that Van Dijk should have been sent off because what's his face, Matip behind him was like in a position to stop that goal scoring opportunity. So I really don't know. I think the referees really killed this game and put Liverpool unnecessarily on the back foot, but it showcased Salah's creativity. Salah was really, really good as a creator, and I think it's about time we say that he's absolutely shit as a finisher.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Newcastle, that left side, yes, pound Trent Alexander-Arnold as hard as you can, right? Trent cannot run and he cannot hide from wherever he is. He is a weakness, and it just comes down to whether they press him centrally like Bournemouth did, or whether they square up against him 1v1 as Harvey Barnes did. Um, I think one last point I need to make is the thing about Diaz against Trippier. That still has potential. Newcastle technically are still weak down that right side. It just so happened that Diaz was the piece that was sacrificed when Liverpool went down to 10 men. That was unfortunate. Yeah, but Newcastle, that left side, shiny toy. Buy Isak, buy Gordon if you like. Real differential there if you can afford a Newcastle midfielder now.
Isak seemed a bit quiet to me, Gabe, if I'm honest with you. I just want to come back to a player you talked up in pre-season, Gabe. I thought Jota changed things when he came on. I think he changed it significantly. What's your view?
He always does. He always does. He always changes things because nobody on that team has what he offers. Like the way he plugs gaps in the counter press, he moves so quickly to plug gaps and just takes away options. And you'll see when Jota's in the field, opposing defenders, when they have the ball, they often turn around and pass backwards. And that effect is that's exactly what Liverpool need their opponents to do, and then everybody can step up, right? That's what they want to happen. So I've been saying for a while, I think Jota is absolutely key to Liverpool. And we have to say, Darwin, 2 great finishes. It's nice to see that. Like when he doesn't have time to think, maybe that's where you need to get him. Play him into space, one touch, then hopefully he build that he can build on that, and maybe. I don't know, maybe come in for maybe Salah comes out because since he can't finish. Yeah.
Can I make a quick point on Jota though? In this case, it wasn't a counter pressing that did the job because when Jota came on, Liverpool were already down to 10 men. It was a deliberate play from Klopp to make certain substitutions on the 60th minute, and then Jota comes on the 75th because the whole time when Liverpool were down to 10 men, Salah was centre forward. And when Jota came on, it shifted Salah to right wing and he played Harvey Elliott central midfield so that Darwin Núñez could survive up front. And the effect was that Jota and Darwin Núñez on the counter attack could play as a front two. So that was the real effect of Diogo Jota, that partnership between Jota and Núñez up front, rather than having Salah up there.
That makes sense, but and it wasn't like they didn't create that many chances, right? There were a couple big chances, and when you look at Liverpool's chances after the substitutions, I look to Eddie Howler with his substitutions.
Oh dear. And I think on that note, I think what we'll do is we'll move everything else into the preview for game week 4, Gabe.
They call that a teaser, I think.
Yeah, I think we will. Yeah, I think that's exactly what we'll do. And what we're going to do, since we're running out of time, we're going to move everything into next week into tomorrow's show, because Gabe and I are back tomorrow. Just very, very quickly, we've got the mini league on the screen. The public one, HUP69D, if you want to join us. And there's also, as I mentioned earlier on, the mini league for the Patreons and the haulers, of which I will shout you all out tomorrow night, gentlemen and ladies, not tonight, because we are coming towards the end of our show, because we want to try and get out of here within the hour, and I'm going to fail by about 20 seconds. Lucian, thank you very much, my friend. You are always a legend. It's nice to see I'm actually starting to think like you a little bit. Maybe I'm learning something out of all this. Gabe, is there hope for me yet?
Always hope for you, Mariner.
And on that note, we will see you all very soon, haulers. Nice to see you. We'll see you tomorrow night for the matchup show, Gabe, right?
That's right.
24 hours from now.
From now. See ya. Peace.
Cheers. Bye-bye. Bye.